Good evening and welcome to the movie.
These aren't the only five by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden and it is 5 Fact Friday. That pretty much sums up how my day is going so far. Morning, everybody. Nice hot cup of tea. Good morning. It's Friday, the 22nd of August, 2025. My computer has died this morning, the one that I normally live stream from, so I'm on my laptop as a backup. And that's just the start of my day. Today, 5 Fact Friday, the day of the week when I share with you the 5 pieces of news that have most significantly impacted the housing market. Now, there's obviously an elephant in the room this week. And for those of you who will have just 5 minutes ago received my weekly 5 Fact Friday newsletter, it just keeps going wrong. Just keeps going wrong this morning. What can you do? All you can do is laugh in the face of the disasters and keep going. This article has on the Negotiator website, which is an estate agency industry website, has come out this morning, and it is the chap in that photograph is Tom Bill, who is the head of research at Knight Frank, and he's Knight Frank's property house price pundit. And it's a good article, and it's his breakdown of all of the noise this week from the government. But one thing I thought was interesting to see from him is because his house price forecasts are always optimistic. So it was gratifying to see him admit that actually prices have fallen 20% in prime central London in the last decade. Anyway, that's his comment, was he'd be surprised if there was anything to tax in terms of capital gain tax in prime central London from the last decade, as prices have fallen 20%. But that's just a little bit of titillation for the morning. The rest of the article is an interesting angle on all the noise, and it is just noise. And I want to make that point, right? Before we get into the 5 facts, let me just quickly run through the headlines for those of you who don't already know what's happened this week. So fact number 1, Rightmove's monthly house price index showed a not untypical fall of asking prices in August, but what was untypical is that they'd both fallen in June and July beforehand. That's very unusual. So 3 straight months of price falls, asking price falls in the summer. Remember, that has nothing to do with what actual prices are doing. They're just asking prices, but those have fallen, and that created a bit of a stir, a bit of conversation this week, with headlines saying that Rightmove asking prices slide £11,000 in 3 months and £5,000 in August. But actually, if you go and look at this document, which you can read in the links, in the 5 Fact Friday links, go and have a look at the full PDF if you haven't seen it yourself, because there's a much more helpful breakdown just on the lower half of the page, where they break down the prices by first-time buyers, second steppers, and top of the ladder, and it's completely different. The second headline is a story in the Telegraph about Reeves floating the idea of an inheritance tax raid that could an inheritance tax rate that is going to cost homeowners up to £82,000. There was fact number 3 is the combination of what some people were calling a mansion tax, but there was confusion and maybe it's an annual property tax. And fact number 4, capital gains tax. A story saying that how it could destabilize the whole housing market. And fact number 5, inflation increases faster than the government wants, dousing chances of any further rate cuts from the Bank of England. So it's the usual mix of government and lender and portal meddling in the housing market. But what's unusual this week is that it feels, and those of you who've got my 5 Fact Friday newsletter will read my thoughts, but it feels like a grenade of uncertainty has been ching, lobbed into the housing market, which is fraught with uncertainty at the best of times. And it's just not going to help. It's just not going to help. But let's just run through the 5 facts first, and then I might have a bit of a chat about that. Who have we got here this morning? Kiobats. That's amazing news. Completed on Tuesday. And if anything on this channel helped that, that's amazing news. That's made my day. That's made it a better day. It's been a disastrous day so far. Nima, hi there. Naida, good morning. Miss Jane, 782. No, it's not going to work. My computer. I'm just going to crack on. So, fact number 1. Let me just get rid of these. Let me get rid of that. There we go. Right. So, fact number 1. Rightmove's house price index. Now, what is actually interesting here, I think, is not the 1.3% fall in asking prices in 1 month in August. That's fairly typical in August. It's the fact that year on year, the overall average newly listed asking price from Rightmove has basically not changed in a year. It's been up and it's come back down, and it's flat compared to this time last year. Now, that isn't an arbitrary annual measure, but it's the one that's most commonly used, and it's extremely rare to see that figure that low. And given that Rightmove's asking price growth figures are often the highest of all the indices, it is a fairly credible long-term indicator of what's happening with unsold property, right? I want to be really clear here. Some people go, but Charlie, you always say Rightmove you can't rely on Rightmove, it's all full of rubbish. No. I've never said that about Rightmove. What I've said is Rightmove's choice of data that it chooses to use in its house price index is incredibly unhelpful, because it is just asking prices in the last 28 days and therefore has no relevance to what's happening with actual house prices. I've always said that I've never questioned that it is asking prices of the last 28 days without any reductions, and that's all it is, and it excludes price reductions and it excludes the rest of the market. But it's nothing if not consistent. So it is interesting to see the change in that average asking price yearly growth figure, because that's the lowest I can remember seeing it for a long time. And that is a leading indicator of what's happening in the national housing stock combined. You should not let that change your perception of what's happening in your local market with the local properties that you're looking at buying or selling, or both. But in terms of the overall direction of travel of the value of the UK's housing stock, that is a notable figure. Okay, right. Fact number 2. Reeve's inheritance tax rate to cost average homeowner £82,000. And this is not it might do, this is it will do. And a working age single homeowner in England with an average priced home and a moderate pension pot would face an inheritance tax bill of £82,000 from 2027, following changes made in the October budget. And where was the bit I highlighted? Oh, it's not this story. No, there we are. So there's that, right? That's to do with homeowners. Okay, so that is the relevance of that is that it's going to impact people's assessment of their pension planning and their tax planning and their inheritance tax and all that kind of stuff. So that's fact number 2. That's going to have an impact on the housing market, without a doubt. Fact number 3, Rachel Reeves plans to tax high-value homes to plug fiscal hole. The Chancellor may use the autumn budget, so may, this is where it's annoying, but she may and she may not. She's drawing up plans to hit the owners of high-value properties with capital gains tax when they sell their homes. But again, it's vague, it's not specific. We don't have anything to go on exactly, and so people don't know what's going to happen. So people are going, "Oh, well, let's wait to see what happens." Um, I'm not going to spend much time on this because it's all just speculation. The next one is an article I thought was interesting because it kind of sets the tone of the overall uh, landscape. Alistair Heath in the Telegraph. Rachel Reeves is preparing the ground for the extinction of the middle classes. Now that's a fairly dramatic headline. The Chancellor's obscene tax grab will turn millions of ordinary homeowners into dispossessed tenants. If you are a homeowner, I have grim news. Rachel Reeves just declared war on you. You could pay even more tax, so much so that in some cases you may be forced to sell your house to pay the bill, and then to hand over yet more cash just to be allowed to say goodbye to your beloved family home. And then yesterday we had a story out on the estate agency industry website, Property Industry Eye. Government's capital gains tax proposal on main residence is complete madness, where somebody says, such a move would not only erode the principle of a property owning democracy, but also risk destabilizing the housing market, especially in high value areas. So these are the facts one to four. And the only other one that isn't related to all of that is still thanks to the government, which is that inflation, CPIH, is now 4.2%. So that's gone up. The only little slither of silver lining in this is that owner-occupier housing cost inflation has actually fallen sharply. It's still at 5.5%, but that's a lot better than the 8% it was just a few months ago. Although, as Sasha Yanchin pointed out in his video on this week's inflation readout, that fall in OOH actually pulls down the CPIH figure from where it would otherwise be. And so the underlying inflation is actually worse than that. It's just the way that it's calculated is hiding it. So if you haven't seen Sasha's video on the inflation readout this week, I recommend you watch it because it gives you quite a surprising perspective. It's not anything that you hear in the headlines. So there we have it. There we have it. I find myself, as ever, my whole shtick about this channel is to help more people move home, whether you're buying or selling or both. It's about moving home. At the best of times, it is never an easy process. And my unpopular opinion, it's not opinion, it's actually fact from working with estate agents as my clients for over 25 years now. I still see on a daily basis absolute airheads saying, oh, well, you don't really need estate agents anymore. I mean, people have been saying that for more than the 25 years that I've been working in the industry. And I started in this industry as one of those people who thought, oh, the internet's here, don't need estate agents anymore. And I was one of those absolute dipstick airhead numpties who hadn't bothered. And this is why I make the accusation that attitude is a bit thick, right? I hadn't bothered to go, if they weren't actually necessary, nobody would use them, would they? Right? The industry only exists because of the demand for the service. And if the service wasn't necessary, people wouldn't pay thousands of pounds to do it. And in light of my recent videos about what I'm doing with Carrington's, and what I think everyone needs to understand, because I had this argument yesterday with someone on X about, oh, well, you've got eBay, you can just sell your house on eBay now. And that displayed just such a lack of understanding of how it works, because to sell a house without underselling it, you have to find and create a market for that house. Right? Every house that sells with just one buyer coming along and making an offer, you have sold it at less price, at a lower price than if you'd created a market for it successfully. Right? And yet 90% of houses do sell with just that one offer of the ones that sell. And even for agents who are using Rightmove, which is arguably where the largest audience of home movers currently exists for now, those guys are failing to create a market for most of those homes. And I define a market as people qualified buyers who've been through the door and viewed it, right? If you're not a qualified buyer who's been through the door and seen it, you're not in the market for that house. If you're an unqualified buyer who's been through the door and seen it, you're not part of the market for the house because you can't afford it. You're not in a position to actually buy it. So the market for a home comprises of human beings who've been through the door of that property and looked at it, who are in a position to buy it. That is the beginning and end of any market for any home. It is the number of people who have viewed it, who have the finances to buy it. And as any agent will tell you, even doing that in the current climate for most agents is very, very hard work. Even the people who've got an address book of buyers, a database of buyers, if they're doing their job properly, and have presence on Rightmove, are finding it hard to create a market for to sell these properties, which is why there are 500,000 or more unsold properties on Rightmove. Let's just have a look on Best Agent, actually. Best Agent News. I'm going somewhere with this, by the way. I'm going somewhere with this, so just bear me out. Bear me out, hear me out. Let me just share this with you on screen so you can be looking at the numbers while I'm blathering about them. And yes, if those of you are thinking, Charlie hasn't had much sleep last night, has he? No, I haven't. I've not had enough sleep. Not had enough sleep. Okay, so there we are. This is England, right? Currently, this is sale agreed on the top line and homes for sale on the bottom line. So there's five just in England, right? That is 542,000 homes for which the estate agents have failed to create a market. On the line above, they found a market. They may have done it badly, they may have done it well, but they found a market and got those properties under offer. But for these ones here, so now tell me that it's easy to sell a house and you don't need estate agents, and you can't get onto Rightmove or the portals without an estate agent, right? Now tell me again why it's easy to sell a house. It's the most foolish assumption that I made to begin with when I first stepped into this industry as this naive, young, overconfident. It's too early in the morning to start using words like that. Who was going, we're going to revolutionize the housing market. We're going to put estate agents out of business overnight. Look how many houses are failing to sell with estate agents using Rightmove and their buyer databases. Now tell me it's easy to sell a house. Honestly, I include my former self or my earlier self in this when I say it is a tangibly stupid observation because it demonstrably hasn't had any thought given to it at all. My relevance, the point of this to this week's Five Fact Friday is, this is how hard the market already is. When you throw in what the Chancellor and what the newspapers have done this week in the way that the cavalier way in which they've just gone, yeah, let's just tease this, let's just tease that, it affects lives. Because there are going to be people in many situations who are now going to have their uncertainty level one notch too high to proceed. And in a chain of 3 or 4 or 5 homes, only one person needs to go, oh, and then that chain gets delayed or collapses. So you need a good estate agent more than ever in this market. Right? A good one, not a bad one. You want one of these guys here, not these guys here, right? These guys here. Because the really good ones get everything sold by just creating a market for your home. And that's where's my motivation for this? I am really worried for the people who need to move house, need to, not because of the money, but because of the move, right? The life move, the births, the deaths, the marriages, the schools, the jobs, the care needs, all of these reasons why people need to move house have nothing to do with money. Okay, they just need to move house. I'm really worried for those guys, and I'm really worried for the majority of sellers, these guys, who are not getting the truth from the estate agents that they speak to about what the market's doing, because agents are always over optimistic about the market. Oh yeah, it's really good. Oh yeah, it's really good. Although I'm beginning to see more and more agents not saying that, or admitting that that's not the case, but they're just the rare good ones. And as per the anecdotes I've given you on previous live streams recently about individual people whose futures have been blighted because of an overvaluing estate agent, we've now got the government piling in to add to that uncertainty and make a difficult situation, an already difficult situation, even worse. Right, I'm banging on. Do we have any questions on anything that's happened today? Morning, Jill. Morning, Jamie. Morning, Andy Hepburn. Andy Hepburn makes an observation. In November 2021, the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England said inflation would peak at 5%, before it then went to 11%. So I'm not sure I believe it'll peak at 4% this time. I think you are not alone. Deborah Rose, good morning. Good morning, Scarlett. But Kevin Flagg, welcome to Gloomsday. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah. Look, all you can do is keep on keeping on, right? And to those of you whose move is a obligatory requirement, I would just proceed, because it's more about the move than the money. I always say this, right? It's more about the move than the money. Just keep going. Now, there are some people who are going to go, hang on, I'm not about to buy a house that may or may not suddenly have a tax liability attached to it. Fair enough. What would I do if I was in the position of wanting to buy a house that might be affected if they make the decisions they're threatening to make? I wouldn't want to just step back and stop, because if I then missed out on a house because of a rumor that didn't come true, I'd be annoyed. And I hesitate to say this because as sellers, you don't want to hear this, right? But I would, if I found a house that was likely to be something that would be affected by these rumored policies, I would proceed and say, I'm going to exchange the day after the budget when we know what's happening, but I'm just keeping my option open because of the uncertainty of the budget. There's a caveat where either we might need to renegotiate, or I might have to pull out, depending on what the government says. Now, that is an awful situation for the seller of any house to be in, a buyer that says that. And it's only a certain portion of the market that's going to be affected by this, but well, we don't even know that. They haven't confirmed that. Is it 500,000? Is it 1.5 million? We haven't been told. Is it going to be an annual property tax? Is it going to be just a mansion sales tax on bigger sales? Nothing's been made clear. If I was a seller, and as Tom Bill says, and I've never agreed with him more strongly, what were the words he used? The Knight Frank guy. Words to the effect of, if you are selling now, here we are, note to sellers. If you are sitting on a taxable gain and thinking about selling, You might want to accelerate your plans before the budget. That's what he says. I concur. But so they haven't even announced the exact date for the budget. It's usually late October. Apparently, Halloween this year is a Wednesday, and it's always on a Wednesday. And one of the thoughts I found myself having about this budget is, are they going to do something that they don't? There are certain measures when they bring them in, they say from midnight tonight. And then they go, oh, from the 1st of April next year, oh, from whatever it might be, it might give you 40 hours. But I'm just wondering whether they're going to pull any triggers on the day. Like, go, well, that's it. As of today, this is changing. As of midnight tonight, this is changing. I wonder. As I let this week's news and reactions sink in, and as I digest it all, I cannot remember in my 50-something years here, including as a child, when I oddly have a memory of some of the things like how bleak everything was and that kind of stuff in the 70s. I can remember in 1979, when I was 7 years old, I can remember the sentiment among grown-ups when Margaret Thatcher got elected. I specifically remember talking to a teacher of mine when I was 7 or 8 years old. 7, no, must be 6, 7 years old. And I was aware of what the election was. I didn't know what the election was, but I was aware that there was this big thing called the election. It was in the news all the time. And I was aware of this sense of relief at emerging from several years of extreme hardship. And since then, I can't remember a time where it feels like the government has made things harder than they are now and are continuing to get worse. That's I'm trying to choose my words carefully here. I'm not being political about this. It's government stuff. I'm not being party political. I'm just saying I cannot remember a time when the government, whose job it is to make our lives easier, has made our lives harder. I cannot remember a time, honestly. And I've been self-employed since my teens. I had a few years of gainful employment in the city, but generally speaking, I've been self-employed since my teens. So we're getting on for 35 years. And what they're mooting this week is difficult. I mean, we don't know what they're going to do. We don't know what they're not going to do. But given all of the property-related rumors that are being leaked by the Treasury, it's looking like it's safe to assume they're going to do something. Now, let's be optimistic, right? Let's hope they're going to scrap stamp duty completely, because nothing would reinvigorate the housing market faster. Nothing would boost the economy faster. Nothing would boost social mobility faster. All of which things improve the government's tax take, by the way. So the loss of stamp duty on residential transactions would be replaced by the increase in VAT, corporation tax, the reduction in the welfare bill as more and more jobs are created, etc. Let's hope that's what they do. I mean, I'm hoping that's what they're going to do. On the other hand, they could do things, because every single time the government's ever done anything about the housing market, it's been bad. They've either made affordability worse, or they've created artificial rushes, or they've created artificial price spikes, or they've created dead. I mean, it's just every time they touch it, it makes it worse. Just leave it alone. But if they decide to go ahead with all of the things that they're threatening, and I wouldn't put it past them, I wouldn't put it past them because again, as a child, my earliest memories of the world were how bleak and difficult things were in the 70s. And you look back at what was happening and why, and there are comparables. And as I had John Durrant, that retired agent on the channel a few years ago, saying this feels like it's going to be the 70s all over again. And it does in a very, very different way, but many parallels. And the desperation, and Tom Bill from Knight Frank talks about the government's desperation in that article, which I've linked to in the live chat, at the very start of the live chat. Um, if they do this ham-fisted approach to changing all these taxes on the property, they're talking about council tax changing, stamp duty changing, capital gains tax changing, a new property tax, all of this stuff, and it's just a whirlwind. The damage they could do is doesn't bear thinking about. And my best guess today, and honestly, I have not had enough time to digest reading between the lines and looking at what is actually likely to happen here. Today, my guess, it's a pure guess. It isn't a prediction. Please don't anyone say, but Charlie, you predicted this. I'm not predicting anything. I couldn't or wouldn't predict anything. But at the moment, my guess is that they're going to make some kind of improvement to stamp duty, probably make it temporary, probably make it only for a certain sector of the market to offset the blow of the new taxes that they're going to bring in, whatever ones those are and however those are going to work. So that they can spin it. Oh, look, we're taxing the rich. And oh, look, we're easing taxes on lower income households. That would be my wild, uneducated guess at the moment, something along those lines. But it's too exhausting to try and predict and think and imagine. I mean, if they don't know what they're going to do yet, how could any one of us possibly know what they're going to do? All I know is I think it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be bad because, I mean, there are people who go, yes, it's intentional, it's deliberate destruction. I mean, there's no. I understand all the reasons people say that, and I hear all the reasons. Then there are people who say, do not attribute to malice what can be put down to incompetence. I think the other thing that also never gets discussed or not discussed enough is the internal conflict between the civil service and the government and the conflicting agendas. You know, there's another thing there that we never really get to see or hear or talk about, but I think that's another major thing. I think there are conflicting factions within government, even within each party. There are conflicting factions in Parliament. There are conflicting factions within the civil service, and there are conflicting agendas as well. It's just a really bloody mess, the whole thing. Which all the people who are the purveyors of this mess are collecting their nice salaries and their government pensions and everything else, while the rest of us pick up the pieces. I've got to put this on screen just for fun. I don't have an answer to this question, but WF451, thank you very much for the fiver. Charlie, you legend. Any news on the sex enjoyment tax? Powered by infrared drones and AI, £20 a bang. Britain's answer to the tech deficit. I have no idea what you're on about. Questions. Miss Jane 782 says, what happens to mortgage rates if the BOE drops rates due to dwindling economy whilst the UK debt holders continue to demand higher rates at the high end of the gilt yield? Well, I refer you back to Alex Groundwater's excellent chart. I don't know what's going to happen with rates. I don't know what's going to happen. But what we can do is look at what happened last time we were in a similar situation. And we can learn one thing from this, which is, and here it is. Let me share this screen. So I don't know if you can see it, it's quite because of the dark colors. Let me make it nice and large on the screen. Okay, but this is a good question. People ask it all the time. Um, the blue line on that, so I'm just going to hide the question now so we can see everything. Right, the blue line on that graph is the Bank of England base rate. And in the middle of the graph, right in the middle where it drops precipitously down, is 2009. And that's the house price, not the rates one. Sorry, that's the wrong graph. Sorry, Alex, that's the wrong graph. Where's the right graph? Where's his interest rate graph? Ah, I can't find it. Never mind. But basically, what it shows, what it proves, is that mortgage rates did not come down with the Bank of England rate last time. They gradually came down after the bank dropped the rate down very, very low. I think as bond yields, which is government bond interest rates, go up and the bond values go down, that and I will show you this graph because this is interesting, and I put this on this week. Where is it? 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 This one here. Look at this. So this graph, let me just do this. There we go. This is a graph going back to 2020 of government bond yields or government interest, government borrowing interest, debt, the cost of debt on the 30-year government bond. And what you can see is that actually before the Liz Truss fiasco, they were already steeply climbing from 1% up to 3%. And then there was the Liz Truss debacle, and they spiked, and then they came back down again, but then they continued. So, there is a bump in the road there, but the trajectory of those rates was happening already. And then they started to level off, and then the Labour government got back into power, and since when they've just kept going up. And this is bad news for all of us. And I think that's not the swaps market, that's the gilt market, right? But the swap rates are the sort of day-to-day measure of volatility in government risk and that kind of stuff, and lending risk in the money markets. And I just don't see the risks dropping anytime soon. We've got lots of international stuff happening, global stuff happening. There are lots of global effects, the US Treasury bond. All of these things affect it, right? The Labour government is not responsible for global bond yields. And there is a link between our bond yield and other countries. But the government of the day is responsible for the bond market's confidence in the risk level of UK government debt. And the higher that line goes up there, the riskier 30-year government bonds are deemed to be. So, Miss Jane 782, what happens to mortgage rates? Honestly, it's anyone's guess. There's too many unpredictable things happening. I mean, is that if there is a financial event of some situation that's going to affect them, is there going to be a credit crunch? There are too many questions, and it's just too much of a mess to know what's going to happen, especially when we don't know what's happening. There's about to be a budget. We know the government is desperate. We know they've got a massive fiscal hole they've got to fill. We don't know. It's just, yeah, we'll see. Piotr Zasada says, first time buyer in Swindon. But thank you, that's really helpful introduction to live comments, saying who you are and what area you're referring to. First time buyer in Swindon. Bad properties already reduced by 20 to 50,000, but good properties still selling in no time, like a day or two. 250,000 for 3-bed in a bad location that needs a complete refurb is mad. Yeah, this is generally true anywhere. First time buyer properties, when they come to, if they're good quality in a good location, they will sell quite quickly. But everything else is hanging on and getting rotten and going smelly and damp and nasty, and the prices are coming down. Matt makes the point, any offer made from today is likely to exchange post budget. So it's like taking an option. SDLT stamp duty may be reduced or removed, so there's potential upside which will soon increase prices post budget. That depends. That depends. There is not an automatic increase in prices because of a stamp duty reduction. There have been and there are when it's temporary and when it's on a certain part of the market. My view is if there was a blanket scrapping of stamp duty, it would change things and there wouldn't be any short-term gain to be made by hurrying up and buying faster. And people will still bid based on the budget they're given by their bank, what they're lent. Um, that's a new name. Hello, piss baby granddad. I don't know what that means. Civil service is incapable of doing anything overnight. Perhaps, but it doesn't mean they haven't. They've done it in the past. They've done it in the past. They can change. They can change fuel duty overnight. That kind of stuff. They can do it as long as they're prepped in advance. As long as the civil service knows about it in advance, it can and does happen. Um, Jammy Pig. Hello, Jammy Pig. That's a new name as well. Welcome to the channel. Says been sitting in rental, post selling for 2 years, watching prices drop around the 500k mark in Bristol. Waiting for the right time as cash buyers. Any advice welcome. Thanks for 2 years of high quality info. You're very welcome. Just be out viewing. Always be out viewing, even if you can see that the direction of travel of prices is down, because there are bargains to be had. And most people never see the bargains because they're not out there looking. You've got to invest more time out there viewing so that you're on the radar of agents who think of you when something comes to the market that they know is a bargain. This is how it goes, right? Sometimes agents get a property to sell where basically the seller has gone, I don't care, just sell it. I've got to sell it. I've got to sell it fast. I don't care what it goes for. I just need it sold. Please just sell it. And when the agents get those ones, and they don't just sell them to their mates, which some bad agents will do, but luckily not all agents will do that. Their thought process is right. This is great. This is a nice, easy deal. I don't want to do loads and loads of viewings. I want to show it to a couple of people who I know are going to buy it. Who are those people? And they will ring you. If you've demonstrated that you're serious about buying, you've got your money ready, you've been out viewing, and you've always turned up on time for your viewings, and you've never said things that annoy estate agents. In other words, you're the least annoying buyer they've been showing around. You'll get that call, right? You will get the call. There's no guarantee, but you definitely won't get that call if you haven't been out looking consistently and turning up on time to viewings and just being reasonable and well mannered and courteous with the people that you're dealing with. They're all just doing a job, right? Everyone's got to pay their bills. So my advice to anyone in this situation is don't stop viewing. If you've got money and you want to buy a house, the bargains they're not easy to find, right? There isn't like a bargain shelf where you can just go up and pluck one off the bargain shelf. That's not how it works in housing, right? So that's my advice to that question. RGAL says, have you noticed a change of tone amongst the MSM housing experts? Yes, I have. I have. Oh, Joey, been waiting for a crash for years. This month, finally had an offer accepted on a house. Is the crash going to come now? Reminds me of that short that I put out where someone said, I know exactly to the day when the house price crash is going to happen. It's going to be the day after I buy my house. This is why I say don't overpay, right? Because it's not me. Other people have been saying, oh, wow, here it comes, here it comes, here comes the crash, here comes the crash. But to be fair, people have been saying that for years and it hasn't come. But 2026, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in 2026. If it's going to happen. I hope it doesn't. House price crashes only help a very small number of current first-time buyers. Everyone else gets disadvantaged by it. So I am not a property price crash cult member. People get me wrong, right? I do think, and as Tom Bill from Knight Frank now admits, central London house prices are down 20%. He's never said that before. He's always saying about, oh, they're going to go up. It's going to be up. It's going to be great. They're going to go up. And actually, no, now out comes the truth, right? Prices have been sliding in certain areas, at certain parts of the market. In other areas, they've held on tighter. None of the indices reveal these differences, which is very frustrating. But you know, it doesn't matter if you're buying a house you can afford and you're planning to stay there long term. It doesn't matter what happens after you bought the house. But do not anybody buy a home now because you think it's a good idea financially. It's a good idea to have a home that you own. That's a good idea that you can afford and stay in it and live in it and raise a family. That's a great idea. Doing it because you think it's going to be a good investment is no longer a good idea. London Girl, hello, that's a new name, welcome. We've spent 40 years working hard and paying tax. Now we plan to retire, selling our semi-detached London family home and downsizing. We will get caught by the new taxes if they happen. We don't know what's happening yet. Huge impact on real lives. Yeah, it is a huge impact on real lives. It's literally like the government going, all that money you've been saving, working, building up everything else. Thanks very much. We'll have some of that. Uh, Joey says, won't the budget take effect in April anyway? Usually the measures they announce in the budget don't come into effect until the following April, end of the tax year. But sometimes, and often, especially with things like stamp duty, it can be sooner and different. I mean, if they decide to announce any kind of property sales tax, but that it's not going to come in until April next year, well, then you're just going to see a massive amount of selling before April next year. Paul N says, do agents really think of motivated buyers just before the house comes to market? I must be annoying them. I don't think I am. Look, yes, it happens, right? When you have actually formed a positive acquaintance with someone because you viewed a few houses with them and you've been clear that you're out there and you are looking for something that's going to be very good value. Don't say you're looking for a bargain, that's annoying. Don't say you're looking for something cheap, that's annoying. Do say that you're looking for good value, and if you find it, you'll move very quickly. That's what you say. And make sure you've demonstrated that so that they believe you. Because again, a lot of the dipstick bargain hunters say all the wrong things. Walking into an agent's office and go, well, everything's overpriced. I mean, you might be right, but it doesn't serve your purpose to say that, right? It never helps you to tell an agent, oh, you're just overvaluing everything. The sellers are unrealistic and this is all too expensive. It doesn't help you to say that, right? Just even if you're right. Yeah. Tony G says, because of your advice, we're able to buy a home after years. Awesome. Fantastic. Joey says, if the crash happens, you can all thank me. I got a good deal, so I'm chilling. I'm sorry, Baldrick's turned up. I don't quite understand that question. Is the Rick's house plans easy to get for any estate agent? Do you mean the land registry title deeds? You can buy those off the land registry website yourself. Rubarbino says the last budget had an immediate increase to second home stamp duty. I'm a mortgage advisor and it was chaotic. Yep, well remembered, quite true. Maria dos Santos says, I'm worried that the tax will be recurring annual as a percentage of the cost of the house, rather like the US model. That is one of the things that has been mooted, not officially confirmed by the government, but it's being dangled as a possibility. Chris, it's very frustrating that sellers don't seem to take into account the additional cost of refurbishing. Don't mind working on a project, but the cost of materials has gone up exponentially since 2020. This is true. But Chris, let's make your offer. It's true that sellers aren't taking those into account because you wouldn't as a seller. You wouldn't think to yourself, I think that the buyer's budgets are going to be reduced by the increased cost of refurbishment. No, sellers don't think that, unsurprisingly. It is frustrating. Yes, Baldrick's turn. Agents can get house floor plans if they want them. It is very easy for them to get floor plans. And I don't trust agents that don't use floor plans. Right, guys. Jill Hayes. Okay, last question. This is on choosing an agent. Any thoughts on how to pick which agent to use if a home is being marketed with 2 agents? I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you saying any thoughts on how to choose the 2 agents? First of all, going multiple agency is never a good idea, except in lettings. In lettings, it can be a good idea. In sales, no. It's a terrible idea to think that using more than one estate agent increases your chances of selling. It actually does the opposite for 2 reasons. First of all, buyers notice that your house is on with more than one agent on the portals and it looks desperate. And secondly, it's demotivating for both agents. So, in terms of how hard they're working to actually get your house sold, you will be lower down the list if you are a multi-agent seller than if you are a sole agent seller. Oh, you're the buyer. Okay, thank you, Jill. That clarifies it and changes it. Any thoughts on how to pick which agent to use if homes butted 2 agents? That's a really good question. Without seeing the 2 agents, I can't really answer it. I would ring each one up and see which one seems more professional to deal with. Um, and then I would go with the one that felt more without telling them why you're ringing them up. Just say, "Hi, I'm looking to buy a house in this area," and don't tell them that you're inquiring about that particular property straight away. Register with them, see which one seems more professional, take it from there. If one is a smaller independent and one is a large corporate, I would, all else being equal, I would go with the independent because your deal will mean more to them than it does to the big corporate. All right. But guys, I need to go. Now, thank you for lots of you have been joining the newsletter. My new feature of my thought of the week seems to be popular, which because it only goes into the newsletter, I don't publish it anywhere else. My thought of the week, which I wrote late last night. If you haven't received it, if you'd like to get it every week, mhwc.co.uk/newsletter. Join the mailing list there. Otherwise, guys, thanks very much. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the bank holiday weekend. And I will see you on the next one.